Hi, this is Dan Devlin for the Detective Dan Devlin Show, Honorable People, Honorable Nation. Again, I hope everyone is having a great day today. There are many issues before us in American society that need to be addressed. We've had our series on the U.S. Constitution, and we covered many aspects of that, but we've kind of broken away in order to deal with some of the issues that are before us in an immediate nature around us in society today. One of the things that I've wanted to cover for some time, and our last video, if that runs in sequence, is a very important program. It was, as you may recall, it was titled Sex, Love, and Young Women. I hope you get a chance to watch that, but here is the other side of the coin. This program is Sex, Love, and Young Men. Many of the things that happen in our society happen because of the way we handle issues, the decisions that we make. You've probably heard me say it before, we are the product of our decisions. Certainly, we're affected by many other factors when it comes to our life. But our life is an amazing thing, and for the most part, we have an awful lot of control over what happens in our life. Certainly, there can be accidents or incidents that affect our life in a positive or a negative way. If we're in an accident, for example, it may physically keep us from doing some of the things that we wanted to do in our life. Other than not being involved in that accident and being wise enough to think beforehand and not do those things that create that condition, sometimes there's little or nothing we can do, and we're drastically affected by what occurs during and after the event, such as, let's say, an automobile accident. But most of the time, the things that affect our life more drastically are the things that we can make a decision about. We determine whether we're going to engage in certain behavior. Sex, love, and when it comes to young men, there's an awful lot that needs to be said that often is not addressed. Many people probably won't like what I have to say, just like they might not like some of the things that I've said in the last video of sex, love, and young ladies. But if you know anything about us, you should know that the truth is what matters above all else. In order to have an honorable nation, we need to have honorable people. And in order to have honorable people, I believe we must love and seek the truth. Not simply be aware of some aspect of it and then turn our backs on that truth that could be available to us because we want to do certain things. Sex is one of those things. A very large part of one of those things that will drastically affect our lives. Obviously, I'm no longer a young man, although I suppose if you were 100, I might be considered a young man. So it's all relative, I guess. But I'm dealing from not only my experiences in life, but the experiences of many other people who I've either read about or I've spoken to on a first-hand basis about what is happening in their life. What positive things and what negative things have brought them to where they are in their life. And whether they're 15, 20, 35, 45, 70 years old, those things that we do early in life often shape the whole rest of our life. Decisions are very, very important things. And when it comes to the area of love, we need to understand something about it and how important it is in our life. But this focus today is not just about love, but it's the aspect of our humanness, our sexuality, coupled with, at times, that area of love that most likely will shape who we are and what we do in our lives for many, many years into the future. I'm doing this video because, of course, I care about you. I could sit home, I could go fishing, I could do a lot of different things. But men have an obligation to pass on wisdom, oftentimes difficult to learn aspects of wisdom, so that you can take advantage of the experiences that other people face in life. And you can grasp and understand the dynamics of the decisions that they made and the result, the effect of those decisions in their life. Now, certainly you know that when we make a decision, it's not a decision that just affects us. It affects many other people as well, and I'll refer, if you've been watching our videos, to the song titled Think that I wrote a number of years ago that says, think about your mother and your father, think about your sister and your brother, think about your aunts and uncles too. Think about your friends and all their family. Think about everything they can be if you don't create big problems in so many people's lives. You can do just as you want to. You always get to choose right or wrong, but when you do, there's something that you ought to know. You always take many others right along. And that's the power of our humanness, is that ability to think about what we're doing, to think about the consequences that may develop based upon the decisions that we make. When it comes to the area of sex and love and being a young man, the area of responsibility as it comes into play with all human beings. But that area of responsibility is something that few give attention to, and because they give so little attention, they make decisions that adversely harm their lives and the lives of many others. It truly is about whether we can master what it takes to have self-control. In our last video, I explained something about males to young ladies and the force that comes over us when we're encouraged by way of females exposing even relatively small views of the female anatomy. And yes, I'm being careful here, but I want to be respectful. We have produced a society in which women think nothing of wearing low-cut blouses or dresses or very short skirts and bending over in the presence of young men. I've seen it, you've probably seen it yourself. It's very difficult when male hormones are raging within a young man to expect him to close his eyes every time a female walks by or is on a billboard or on a television program, acting in a way to really lure the consciousness of males to focus on them as females, not simply as female human beings, but sexual human beings. I would like to change that. But realistically, I have little power to do that, other than the fact of trying to encourage responsible people to understand what they're doing. They're often turning on this thought process that was not geared towards thinking about females, and certainly not in a sexual way, but their attention has been pulled in that direction because of the way young women behave and the exposure of the female anatomy. I know women who are very close to me get upset when I talk about these things. They don't want to think of themselves as luring males all around them to think about them in a sexual way. That's what they say. But their actions show something totally different. And so we have all these exposures, and maybe that's a great word to use, that we're confronted with many times during the day. And yet we're criticized when we act upon it, or we approach a female and even try to make conversation, or heaven forbid you say something that might be misunderstood, especially in the workplace, and you're probably just seeking out the knowledge of where this female stands. Is she looking for some kind of relationship, or is she just doing what we call teasing? Is she using, and it is power, is she using this power, and she feels that power? Is she using that in order to feel better herself, to feel as though she's desired by many men, and oftentimes, if they're married, men who aren't even their husbands? It truly is a complex situation. However, we're forced to deal with it as males. And if we do not master the ability to have self-control and try to either walk away from those situations, and believe me, it's very hard to do. And females that are watching this, you need to understand that. Where do they turn to not have this invasion of their thinking? I don't know where they go. It used to be that you could go fishing or you could go hunting, and mostly women weren't involved in those things. But that has even changed, I believe, mostly because of the dollar factor, and companies felt as though we could get more money if we would encourage females to get involved in these so-called sports. But men, as individuals, need time away from females. Go ahead and criticize me for saying that, but it's a reality, and you young men need to understand that. Years ago, we had the boys' club and the girls' club. Men, young boys, young men really, could go to a place where they didn't have to have young females using their sexuality, and they do it at a very young age in order to try to get attention. They had a secure environment where they could just be young men, boys, and not have to worry about that. But what happened, and you know, if you've been watching, I believe the biggest problem in American society is the feminization of the American male mind. And what happens is that males give way to the thinking of females, which females think they have to be involved in everything that males do. They have to be involved in their sports. They have to be allowed in the locker room. They have to be involved in a restroom, be able to go in there. Reporters say, oh, it's a disadvantage if you don't allow me in their locker room. Men don't want that. There may be a few here and there that think it's a great idea. But mostly, men like to do male things. And they like to have that peace and solitude, with other males in order to bond, in order to deal with things that males should be dealing with without the influence of women to pull our attention in another direction. As a law enforcement officer, people think it was great. Let's have female officers on patrol and let them do the things that male officers do. The rational thinking just simply went out the window. When I talk to people in various groups, I'll ask them, describe the person who you would want to come to your aid if you are in a desperate situation and fear being harmed, injured, killed. Describe the person that you would want to come to your aid. I can tell you, they never describe a 5'6" female that weighs 120 pounds. Not even those females, if they're honest with themselves, would describe that person. Yet, because we have feminized the American male mind, we have had decisions made that say, oh, why can't they do it? You can give them all the reasons. You can tell them they're not physically the same. You can tell them that, when danger is there, you need oftentimes bigger bodies to deal with these things. The intimidation factor alone of a large male against other males is different than if you have a smaller female or even a female of any size, simply because males deal with other males in certain ways. They're more concerned, they're more intimidated if you have a large male present. But of course, because, and here you won't like this either, but because we said, okay, it's all right to have these females that are relatively short and relatively weak become an enforcer of the law, even though we know that it places at risk the other males who have volunteered to help protect your life. Those females, any reasonable person would understand it is much more difficult or impossible for them to do the job that needs to be done. And so what do? We say, because males file lawsuits and said, well, if 5'5" women can be hired, then 5'5" men can be hired. And what happens is, it really is a visual factor that comes into play, a factor of reasoning, where a suspect, someone who has done something wrong, sizes up the situation and decides whether he's going to try to escape, hurt or injure or even kill the police officers involved. And because those officers are smaller and smaller, they see no choice but to go for a firearm, where years ago we would physically subdue a suspect. Now, either you have 15 officers who are trying to physically subdue them, and that might be a little many, several at least, or you have individual officers who figure they can't take care of the situation, and they immediately go to a firearm and shoot numerous rounds because they're in fear. But setting that aside, I mention this because these are the things that we need to know as males. Our society has lied to us, and continually they refuse to address the truth of the matter when it comes to issues of males and females. I've got news for you, we're not the same. And there are some things, I remind people, that females can do better than us. Try breastfeeding a child. See how that works for you. So we have our place in society. And we as males are forced to live in the society that our fathers and grandfathers have allowed to develop into what we have today. Individual responsibility, self-respect, oftentimes is thrown out the window, and sex is treated as if it was a game that has no consequences. As I've said in the last program, those consequences are often realized for the rest of your life. If you're irresponsible in your sexual behavior and you perform acts that can actually produce another human being, a child, your posterity, you have to watch my other videos and understand who your posterity is. It's all your descendants until the end of time. When that process of the creation of a human being occurs, and I believe that occurs when what we call conception occurs. The two components that cause cells to divide and begins this life of a human being, that is your posterity. And by the way, that's who's named in the Constitution to be treated exactly as you're treated. But we don't care about that. We want to do what we want to do. We don't want the interference of facts. And we're going to see where that whole issue goes and see if we as a society, as individual human beings, are honorable enough to be honest and to halt the destruction of our posterity in the womb. But again, this goes back to what? Without that sexual behavior, and oftentimes it's irresponsible sexual behavior that creates that condition, that creates that new human being. And what do? And oftentimes, and I'm dealing with adult men who are 60 years old, who have aided and encouraged young women, and women of all ages really, who they've had sexual relationships with, to abort, to destroy, to kill their unborn descendant. And men and women, now they're sorrowful. They often realize and will outwardly say, well, I've actually murdered my own child. And I can't argue with them because they are absolutely correct. And they have to live with that for the rest of their life. I know some men who have no living children because they've encouraged several women to destroy that man's own posterity, his unborn children in the womb. Now, you can be faced with that situation, or you can be responsible and you could say, wait a minute, I falsely told this woman that I loved her. I really wanted the sex, and I maybe even got a little physically forceful in order to push that. I've lied to her and said that she wasn't a woman if she didn't involve herself with sex. I've intimidated her and said, well, what are you afraid of? Well, you don't love me. I could go on, and there are a million things that I could say that men do in order to get females to have sex with them. This is your future. It's the future of these individuals who we call our posterity. Living individuals, human beings, whose lives are at stake because we want things to go our way and it's inconvenient for us to do what is responsible. This is a relatively new thing to have so many people have so many what we call abortions, destruction of their posterity in the womb. I hope that we're going to end that soon, but we'll see. But what this program is about is it's about your power to control your future and the future of many other people as well. And so practice self-control. Understand what respect is. Understand that the female that you're dealing with may regret that action that she's going to go through, even if she's voluntarily going through it. She will blame you all of her life, and she will punish herself mentally, perhaps even physically, because she made those decisions. And she made them because you encouraged that. Yes, maybe she was the impetus. Maybe she was the initial cause of having your mind go in that direction. You need to be strong. I keep saying we need courageous men in this country. And if we have courageous men, we'll do these things which are often very difficult to do. Perhaps the most difficult of all. We know when we look at animals, a bull elk will stop eating. He'll fight all the other males in order to have sex with a harem of females, and perhaps will become so weak he'll lose his life during the winter season. That's how powerful this drive is. But we can master it. I want you to know you have the power to do this. But you need to practice this power. You need to make intelligent decisions. You need to understand that you are the product of your decisions. So it's up to you. Make better decisions in your sexual behavior, and I'm confident that you will have a better life and you will have fewer regrets in your life. I believe that God will help us if we ask Him to do this. So I ask you to seek His guidance and to resist the temptations that are before us. God bless you all. I hope you all have a great day. This is Dan Devlin for the Detective Dan Devlin Show. Honorable nation, be an honorable person.